How you doing? This is Reverend Shane Harris.
And this is Bishop Bowser.
You're tuned in to the Firing Line here on this beautiful Saturday here in San Diego. Thank you for tuning in. You're tuned in to San Diego's Civil Rights, Social Justice, and National Issue platform, where we're going to discuss national and local issues that are taking place in the black, the brown, and the red community. We're going to talk a little bit about some things today. We want to thank you for tuning in faithfully, those who continue to press on with us in our, I believe, our fourth week. We're pushing in our first month, fifth week, and we're really excited about some of the things that are taking place. We want to begin today with Virginia.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about sort of what's happening on the ground there, and sort of what's going on with this case where the reporters were killed.
Mm-hmm.
And Bishop, I
Yes.
mean, this is really something else, how this is taking place and sort of how this is happening.
Yes, it is.
And as we begin to look at discrimination, as we begin to look at race, as we begin to look at hate crimes, we have to begin to identify that hate crimes can happen on both sides of the fence.
Yes.
And we are quick to run when we feel that it was a white on black crime. But what do you do when there's a black on white crime? What is the discussion around that, and what is the process? And so as we begin to look at this, we know a few things about this Virginia man. He definitely dealt with some issues that were going on in the workplace. At least he said he did. And we know that he was filing for some kind of lawsuit for discrimination and treatment in the workplace. Bishop, I mean, discrimination in the workplace, and I know you've been through some things, some seasons in your life as well, where as a black man, as well as a preacher, you're on both sides of the fence, and you're trying to work and going through some of those challenges. What do you think about this discrimination in the workplace and these challenges that are taking place?
Well, first of all, I think that, with the incident that happened in Virginia, the narrative seems to be focused on mental health, his mental state, and also gun control. And a lot of times when there's violence that take place, that's basically what we're talking about. We're always talking about, the gun control, and now, especially when it comes to blacks dealing with the mental health, most of the time they don't even look at that,
Right.
But when the incident happened with some of the other folks who happen to be a white or whatever, they begin to interject the mental health issue, things like that. We know we've always had these issues for years and years and years that have been going on in our community when we talk about gun control, trying to get a grip on that, and mental health. But I think when we look at the media and mainstream media and the narrative, and even on some of the black media outlets on the internet, the discussion is centered around that. And I think most, especially among the black community, trying to move that to mental health. But I think the point that is being missed in all of this, and one of the things that the gentleman brought up, was about being discriminated against. And I think we're missing that point of the argument, not only being discriminated against, but then they dismiss it by saying, oh, well, they didn't file charges. Well, that's a part of the system that makes it hard for any individual that's been discriminated against to really bring a complaint against their employer for discriminating against them because of their race, or because they're black, and things like that, or a person of color. So I think, at least from my perspective, we should focus on that also, because he said that was the issue that he had. And remember the black officer who killed other officers in LA, that was one of the things that he was complaining about too, how he was treated in the workplace.
Right.
And so we got to start looking at that as a labor business agent person, and being a part of the labor movement. I've seen a lot of discrimination that take place in the workplace, and it's hard to prove. They make it real hard for you to prove. It's almost, when a person fires you, they got to tell you, I'm firing you because you're black, and that's the only way one of the ways you can file that complaint against them.
And I mean, you mentioned mental health, and one of the things, I definitely worked in the foster youth realm, in mental health systems realm, and working in that segment of social justice, and growing up in the foster care system. It seems as though blacks are sort of not discussed when it comes to mental health. It seems as though blacks and browns are not respected amongst others in mental health, and I've seen it where we were expected to walk out of slavery and to not really not really be talk some of the stuff that we saw through. Come on now. I mean, you go down history and you begin to see how slavery and how they pushed you out. They freed you. You had the liberation, but in reality, you really weren't free, because you were freed from the chains, but you weren't freed from the chains of the mind. And so as we begin to look at this stuff, and we believe that chains are broken by Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, but in reality, when you talk about the lands issues and you begin to look at our people, how they have had to leave slavery and hurry up and figure out how to get things together, when in reality they were never talked through some of these things. And that's the disadvantage, that our people have not really had a chance to discuss mental health and discuss some of these issues within the brain. So when you begin to look at some of these cases, I begin to question, when I see mental health systems and the way that the foster care system in particular experiencing it the way I did, that the way that they don't discuss blacks and browns being in the spectrum of mental health, it's definitely an issue to me. And
yeah, most definitely it's an issue. And I think that even when you look at individuals who have life in prison, things like that, there's a lot of young men who have mental health issues, and if those issues were addressed earlier, they probably could have prevented them from getting life in prison. That's why I'm a great advocate of mental health issues, because me being a former gang member, when I go back and I look at a lot of my homeboys that were when we were banging and putting in a lot of work, I used to say, man, this dude, he got a lot of heart, he's very courageous, but then you find out later on that they had some mental health issues that were going on. So now I got a lot of homeboys that's doing life in prison, they're on medication, and they probably never get out of prison. And if we could have got them some help ahead of time, we could have prevented that. So I think, and even when you look at violence and when you look at gun control and all these different things, I think mental health has its place and has a role to play in there, especially in the black community. But remember also, it's kind of taboo, especially in the black community, talking about mental health and someone admitting that and going and saying, I need to get some help. I need some counseling or whatever the individual needs. And so we got to also work within our community and within our churches to get individuals to understand that it's nothing wrong with admitting that you need some counseling. You can't handle the stress or the pressure, especially in church. And everything is not a demon either.
And that's true. And
even though there might be a demon behind that bush, we can't just always blame it on that.
And some of those challenges are mental challenges. And even as you begin to discuss this whole idea of our people, that our people really don't think about the mental challenges that we go through. And when you look at the house Negro and the field Negro, as you begin to identify this, you're
going to get in trouble for saying that now. Who you calling the house Negro?
I don't care. When you begin to see the house Negro.
Who's the house Negro?
Hold on. When you begin to see, I'm framing the narrative. When you begin to see the house Negro and how the house Negro thinks versus the field Negro, and you begin to think how the house Negro says, I'll deal with whatever I got to deal with because at least I'm in the house. Come on now. And so when you begin to see these challenges, you begin to look at how the field Negro doesn't have the same idea that the house Negro has. But the house Negro says, at least I'm in the house. There's an issue when you look at that, and how you begin. And so as we begin to move into the Sound of 1,000 March, and we're going to continue to talk about discrimination in the workplace. But as we begin to talk about the Sound of 1,000 March, we don't put our people downtown to forget about our people. We don't put our black preachers and folks downtown to forget about their people. And so when you talk about the house Negro, and when you talk about folks being wavered around in the mayor's office and being wavered around in certain offices in our judicial system, and how our folks get in and then they forget about the people who really put them in. There's a huge problem when you begin to look at that.
But that's the problem. I think the deception is that you think they were already on your side and you think that they were already there for you, but you got to realize a lot of these individuals are already for themselves anyway, and was always filled with greed anyway. So that's kind of where the problem, when you're dealing with money, you're dealing with greed, you're dealing with power, and dealing with people that have no sense of self-esteem about themselves and no identity of really knowing who they are, then that's what ended up happening. So I think that there's a deception into thinking that these folks are for us when they're really not. They're always for themselves anyway.
And so one of the things that we're doing here in San Diego, we're encountering some challenges. The community has felt distant. And we're going to confront from minimum wage to mass incarceration. We haven't had a response from our mayor. We haven't had a response from our mayor's office and city officials concerning some of the mass incarceration issues. And some of even the minimum wage was vetoed. We are going to take 1,000 people downtown, and we want you to come march with us at Pantoja Park, Pantoja, Pantoja Park, downtown San Diego. We're going to march from there to the mayor's office and hold a rally and a press conference outside of the mayor's office with 1,000 people on November 6th. We're pledging you to come with us. We are going to challenge not just the mayor's office, but the city, from mass incarceration to minimum wage. And we have definitely some of the unions and other folks with us that are going to march with us. And so we definitely want you to come. Sound of 1,000. We're going to be on one accord with some of the issues that are taking place. We're going to challenge legislation, and we're going to ask for justice, and we're going to ask for questions. We're going to ask for a response, and we're going to begin to ask for true communication with our community. There's one thing to be an imagery type person and to be able to take pictures with the Padres and talk about Qualcomm Stadium, but you can't talk about Qualcomm Stadium and the Chargers as much as you talk about mass incarceration and the issues happening in our city with mass incarceration and policing. You are the SDPD's boss, chief boss. You are in control of the chief, and so when you are approaching Chargers more than you're approaching policing and the way that is being done, we have a true issue with that.
And also, before we, even when we talk about hiring and promoting within the ranks of officers, when we talk about people of color, we must talk with our community and not just a few people. Get feedback from all of us, because if not, you're going to have some problems.
So, as we begin to approach this, and when we get back, we're going to also approach something else, the Black Lives Matter movement. There's a lot to discuss with that, and Dr. Sid is with us, and we're going to discuss that with him as well. But one of the things I would definitely say about this Sound of 1,000 is that we're excited, because we're going to mobilize here in San Diego. We're going to mobilize at least 1,000. Now, if we get more than that, we're excited. But we want you to tell your friends, your family. We have a Facebook page up, Sound of 1,000 March. You'll be able to get us on a website pretty soon, and there's going to be a lot of information coming forth about this. There's emails and all kinds of information going forth. So we want you to come and march with us. Bring your issues. We have some very prominent pastors in the community that also have felt a distance from the mayor's office, and we are going to discuss some issues. This is not a personal attack on the mayor. This is an ask that the mayor will work with us in the community, not work with a coalition that has really sideswept the black community, but work with the community, not just the coalition of pastors that voted for you. So we want to definitely begin a challenge.
But, and we're not even asking that. We're concerned about our community as a whole. We don't have to eat at the mayor's table, meet with him, or sit down and talk with him, or be his friend. Even though it's okay. But we want changes in our community. We want to see the effect spill over into 805 South. We want to see a difference there. We want infrastructure. We want a lot of things done. We need a youth community center. We need a lot of things in our community, and those issues are not being addressed.
And when we elected you, we particularly saw you in the community a whole lot. Once you were elected into office, it almost seems as that we begin to see the mayor's staff more than we see the mayor. And so we see the mayor going north of the 805 when it comes to the Chargers, but we haven't really seen the mayor coming south of the 805. So you send your staff and you send other folks into the community, but we really haven't seen you. So we want to see you more. We want to hear you more.
And that's okay if he does send the staff, because he can't be everywhere. But what we want to see is change. We want to see change. We want to see policies changes. We want to see the funding that we need in our community, the resources in our community.
And we want to hear about mass incarceration approach.
That's what, absolutely.
We want to hear about policing.
Now that we do want to see. We want to see him take a stand when it comes to mass incarceration. What is your issue on that? Where do you stand with all the violence that is taking place? What are you going to do to make the difference?
So when we get back, we have two guests with us today, Pastor Dennis Hodges, and we also have special guest, Dr. Sid Martinez, who is a professor of sociology at USD, University of San Diego. When we get back, we're going to discuss Black Lives Matter. We're going to discuss also, Pastor Hodges has a history of being within the force, also serving in our city. And now he's retired, but he's doing great things in the community. We're going to discuss a few of these things when we get back. Tune back in. Stay on with us. The Firing Line with Reverend Shane Harris
and Bishop Bowser.
I want you to stay on the line. We're coming right back with some of the hottest and latest topics in social justice, civil rights.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
You said how many seconds?
20 seconds.
That's quick.
How long do you want me to talk? Because sometimes I go I talk too much.
Oh,
so
we're-
I
You like a preacher.
Yeah.
You're a preacher.
so I gotta cut it down.
You're in for 30 minutes. So
All
Yeah,
right.
and we'll you know.
yeah.
Right. 'Cause I'll
Jump
give
in
you,
there
I'll
or
give you a
something.
long-winded. I'll be like,
So will this be a question answer piece here?
Yeah,
right? Okay.
sort of like
Okay.
I'll talk about you served on the not on the force.
In corrections.
In corrections,
Yeah,
right.
both Illinois and California.
5,
Okay, so we'll talk about that first, and then
3, 2, 1.
hello, you're tuned in to the Fire Line. This is Reverend Harris.
And this is Bishop Bowser, and welcome back.
Thanks for staying with us and really locking in with us. Today we have two special guests, but we're gonna talk to one of our special guests first, and Pastor Dennis Hodges, who has been very essential in our city, who has a very long history with working with men in our city, and served in the correction department here in our city as well as in Illinois. Pastor Hodges, thank you and welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
And Pastor, you're the pastor of,
The Church of Yeshua HaMashiach,
which is
that's
located.
Hebrew for Jesus the Messiah.
Yes, sir.
We're located 4512 Imperial Avenue.
Thank you for coming on, and we're excited about the work that you're doing, and we really wanted to talk about it. You worked in the correction department.
Yes. My career started September 16th of 1976 at Menard Correctional Center, Southern Illinois, on the Mississippi River. I started out as a correctional officer, worked there a couple of years, and I went to Marion, Illinois, to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And in California, I came to California in 1979. Started CMC, went through the ranks of CMC, I went to Susanville, went to Vacaville, went to San Quentin, and I came to California Department of Corrections, Richard J. Donovan, in 1988, which is here in San Diego. Promoted to lieutenant in 93, and then promoted to captain special agent in 2004. Retired 2008. So 32 years total that I worked in corrections.
Wow. and-
7 different
yeah.
prisons. Worked the streets for 4 years.
Wow. So you actually you guard some of the prisons, worked in some of the prisons where a lot of my homeboys are. All those prisons you mentioned there.
Yeah,
I got a
yeah,
lot of friends
yeah,
up in
yeah,
those different prisons.
And God has a sense of humor. God has a way of doing things. I grew up in Chicago. Ran the streets.
Yes.
Did the whole gang bang piece as well. But he kept me.
Amen.
And his grace covered me.
That's right.
And it's a threefold piece here. I started out running with him, and then ended up working to watch over him. And now I'm ministering to him.
Amen. Look at that.
Yeah. God has a way of doing things.
That's right.
So
you know it all.
You ended as the what was
As a special agent with the Special Service Unit.
okay, and talk a little bit about what you did in that unit.
On the street, we were like a liaison between the Department of Corrections and local law enforcement agencies. Remember the Onion Field killings? The 2 detectives that got killed in Bakersfield, 1963. This unit was started by the state legislation, and they started it in 1963. I was the first black correctional captain, a special agent that was assigned here in San Diego in 2004.
Talk a little bit about that experience. You were the first
Oh,
black.
I mean, it was a great experience. I worked as again a liaison between the local law enforcement agencies, which was San Diego PD, FBI. I was part of the Violent Crimes Task Force, NTF, ATF, and all the alphabet units, ATF, NTF, ABC, you name it, I did that. And what we did was utilize those inmates as maybe confidential informants.